Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, conversation surrounding Tech's 75-72 loss at the hands of the Kansas Jayhawks. We talk Bacho, we talk O'Banner, we talk Harmon, we talk Washington, and we talk pop, brother, next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Always appreciate being your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube if you have not so far. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. God bless America. It was quite a night from United Supermarkets Arena, Chris, as Texas Tech is close, but without a cigar at the end of the day. When you're taking on a top three team, or anytime you're taking on the Kansas Jayhawks, you know it is going to be a tall task, but I kind of feel like my feelings, at least, are mirroring in some ways, not always, but in some ways, the feelings I had leaving Fort Worth. Man, you did some good things as a team. In some points of the game, you were certainly playing the role of a Big 12 basketball team that's contending for the NCAA tournament. But at the end of the day, you were 3 points fewer than the other guys, and that's all that matters. So we'll give some credit where it's due, but obviously have to highlight some frustration again today as well.
Yeah, when I got home last night, my wife says to me, "Man, they played really hard," and all. I said, that's what losers say. I was like, because I felt good. I thought, hey man, you gave yourself a chance. There was a lot of good things, but I was like, unfortunately, you're left saying that and trying to make yourself feel better after a loss. And man, and this is just like you're sitting here at 0-2 in the league, and you start to just look ahead, man. And you've got 2 of your next 3 on the road, and all those things, and it's just like so. But you're right. I mean, there was some good things to feel good about and to build on. But again. We will sit here and talk about how hard you played, which they did, and the frustrating way that the officials didn't call anything at the end, and kind of it hurts you big time, and which they blew it. But this is what you say when you lose. But hey, look, O'Banner played a monster game. He bounced back. You have to have that from him night in and night out. That may be the best team in the country right now. After watching them up close, I don't know if I buy that, although I don't know, obviously not having seen the other teams that you would be talking about in that space. They're not as good as some Kansas teams that I've seen come through here. There's not a ton of NBA types. I mean, Jalen Wilson is, Grady Dick is going to be. McCullough is just kind of a guy for them, but he's a nice piece, but they don't have a stud center like they usually have, and you were in a position to pull it off, and you shot the ball like crazy. I mean, that was the thing that I just don't know if you could expect it to hit 10 threes game in and game out, but last night they were falling for sure.
Yeah, your turnover numbers were manageable. It was nothing to write home about. You still gave it away 15 times, and some of those in just excruciating moments where you really couldn't give it away. You knocked down the number of three-pointers that you've been kind of alluding to this season. You went beyond that, actually, because I think you've really talked a lot about 8 or 9 kind of range will get you in games late in them, give you a chance to win. And, yeah, you had a bounce-back effort from your best player in Kevin O'Banner. But, man, some of the Jayhawks shooting that was just lights out. I think Harris was perfect at the end of the day from beyond the arc, 5 for 5. Wilson earlier rather than later, wound up 3 for 9, but had a couple of big ones there in the first half. It was some of those moments, Chris, where I felt like as a fan watching, Texas Tech is having to empty their bucket to establish what they've established, and they've worked so hard inch by inch by inch, and then boom, here comes old basketball fat cat just mopping it all up with one quick three-pointer. And there's nothing illegal about that. Basketball allows for it. I am envious when the other team can do it that way, but things just so hard to come by for the Red Raiders. And I got to wonder what it might have looked like if you weren't shooting the way that you did from beyond the arc. But, yeah, that was nice to see, if nothing else, clearly.
Yeah, and you mentioned DeJuan Harris. I mean, that was you could tell the way that Tech was playing defense. They were going to make sure that Jalen Wilson and Grady Dick didn't get open looks, and they were trying to limit those. And so DeJuan Harris was kind of somebody that, okay, and he had made 6 threes the entire season.
I didn't know that till now. That makes me feel worse.
6 threes. And so you're thinking, okay, if we have to spend our defensive currency and overhelp or really try to take some things away, we're going to focus on the kid that's made 38 of them and is shooting nearly 50%, right, and Grady Dick, and then Jalen Wilson, who's maybe playing as good as anybody in the country. And then lo and behold, I mean, DeJuan Harris, he has a career night. I mean, 18 points. He made 5 threes last night alone. So he nearly doubles his 3-point output after last night based on what he had done. I mean, he scored like 6 points versus Oklahoma State this past Saturday, and he has 18. I mean, go figure. But this is what Kansas basketball usually does. They have a guy that you're not expecting just step up and do it, and they're deeper than most teams. And you see with your team, we'll get into some of that here in a little bit, but like, You had a few pieces that played really well, Pop Isaacs, and Kevin O'Banner. But then you start to look at, okay, where was Davion Harmon last night? Where was the guy that we had seen? And unfortunately, they had KJ Adams step up, they had DeJuan Harris step up, along with Jalen Wilson, and it was but they're really good, they're disciplined, and we'll talk about the way that the game ended whenever you want to. It's just frustrating the lack of a whistle, I guess, in your building, and I just have been. I've been in Lawrence, Kansas, many a time, and you wouldn't have got the same benefit.
Or the lack of a whistle goes the other way, because wasn't there a big non-call against Oklahoma State or whoever it was the other night in their building? I mean, it was 2 days ago that people were saying online, well, there goes those made men, the good fellas.
And
the striped shirts.
I don't understand it. I mean, this is a team, their head coach was suspended before this season. Suspended. Okay. Self-imposed, for fear that they don't, and yet, I mean, pun intended or pun unintended, whatever. Yeah. I mean,
what are you going to say, man?
Yeah.
And Chris, I really, it specifically is a Kansas thing. I feel like I see it. It's like the Texas football effect. I don't know what it is. You got refs fist pumping when the Longhorns score in the end zone over the years. I mean, Randy Crissell is like the Dean Emeritus of the University of Texas, and he's just always wearing an orange robe. I mean, it's the Texas equivalent from football to basketball. It is a Kansas specific thing, and I don't know if it's just thousands and thousands of years of basketball evolution where officials' minds are conditioned to support a historical blue blood. They're like, hey, they made up the damn game here. Surely they couldn't be breaking a rule, right? If it wasn't allowed, they wouldn't be doing it. They know the rule. I don't know what it is, but it seems to always come back around. I didn't mean to peel that off just yet. Let's break that seal a little later in the program, because I need some wisdom from an elder statesman such as Chris Level as to how to process things like that, because I just am disgusted anytime you have the opportunity to even involve them in a conversation, because nobody wants to do that. No coach, no player, no fan wants to be talking about these guys with whistles, but I think we have some cause to. So let's do it in just a bit. I want to get to Daniel Baccio as well coming up in just a bit. Things interesting, obviously, beyond just last night's game for Daniel. But you mentioned Pop Isaacs, Chris, and early on, if it was not for the lightning of Pop Isaacs, what might this game have been? Because really, he was offense incarnate for Texas Tech. And man, this little one-handed maneuver to the basket, silky smooth. I don't even know if I've really seen that come out as often as we saw it last night. He had a great game.
Well, and so what happens is he's going to start to find out is, he starts burying threes one after the other. We all watched it. It was impressive. Yeah. He's got deep range. And so with all of this, I mean, guess what's going to be on the next scouting report? And then even at halftime, it's like, hey, face guard him. Let's put somebody bigger, longer on him, and don't let him get a shot off. So they start overplaying him, and so now he's okay. Now I've got to get to the basket. They're going to overplay me here. I've got to be able to get to the rim a little bit. He finishes with the ball way out in front of him, and did a really good job of just being kind of crafty. But he's going to get some focus now going forward, and rightfully so, because he's one of the main threats for the Red Raiders and being able to score it. And I mean, just the range that he showed last night, when you're smaller like he is, and you're able to step way out and bury those shots consistently, not only is it powerful for your team on offense, but it also opens up everything else, because when they start overplaying you, you've got all kinds of room to maneuver. And like you said, he got to the basket a couple of times, and just with the hezzy, he had a little hesitation move out there above the basically was above the 3-point line, and then the seas parted, and he finishes with the layup. And like, where was this Lamar Washington? Where was this? The bucket, I think at the very end of the game, it's a one-man fast break. I mean, I need to see more of that from Lamar Washington, being able to get to the basket and basically baseline to baseline as quick as he did, because we have seen a lot of that from Davion Harmon, but it was Lamar Washington that was in the game at the end and able to get to the basket. But Pop Isaacs, man, I could not be more impressed with that. He does not look like a freshman. He's not scared. He's strong. He's confident. And he doesn't think about it when he gets the ball and he's in range. He just pulls the trigger and they go in, because he works really, really hard at it.
Seems fairly calm too. And I know he's not playing a perfect game, but for a guy who is so into it and exerting so much energy, I don't feel like I'm seeing him all that much out of control here or there either. I mean, we saw some of that early on, but I don't get that same kind of vibe. I'm sure he'll still have his moments. And the tail of the tape on him is in the face, anywhere deep. And when he's going to the hoop, put him on the floor. I mean, it's about to start to be a fist fight for that guy to get in the rim, because of the attention that he's earned already to this point in the Big 12. So deservedly so. And if I was the other guy, I'd be saying the same thing. Like, we got to be physical with this cat and give him no space beyond the yard, because he is unafraid, and that's great to see in such a young player. I mentioned Daniel Baccio. We'll get to him coming up. I want to touch on some of those guys that you just touched on right there as well, because I thought it was a really interesting dynamic between Harmon and Washington as the game progressed. So we'll get to those things and much more coming up on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. 2023 has arrived, and if you're not hitting the ground running with your small business or otherwise, you're already behind. If you're a small business owner or the hiring manager for a business, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. And that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They help you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs. With targeting tools, they go beyond just resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. It's why small businesses are rating LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you find those qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post that job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free today with LinkedIn Jobs. Terms and conditions apply. Glad to have you along for the ride on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. He's Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan, joining you from west of the 100th Meridian, where it's really going down here in the great state. Once again, Tech remains in the great state, remains in Lubbock, as they've got the Sooners coming up from the USA Saturday night. Still got time this week to get you set for that one, but we are digesting 75-72 Jayhawks over Red Raiders, and wanted to get to a couple of specific Red Raiders, Chris, as we were mentioning just a moment ago. Baccio, Harmon, Washington, may touch on a few others as well. But wanted to get to Daniel Bacho first because he quite literally plays such a big role for Texas Tech. Can you give me a feel of his status coming into the game? Because I know it was, and I don't really mean availability, but what percentage was he as far as how he was feeling leaving Fort Worth? And then clearly we got some things to talk about as far as how he's feeling again, now leaving this one against the Jayhawks.
Well, and you know, you can come into that game and you're looking at it on paper, and that's where Kansas is weaker than in most years. I mean, there is no Azubuike, there is no David McCormick. I mean, they just don't have like this big time center like they usually have. Mitch Lightfoot has been around there for several years that he's gone now. And so Bacho is clearly, like on paper, a huge advantage for you. Again, if it's the Bacho that we have come to know and get used to seeing this year, with just the high motor, very active, ability to score and rebound and protect the rim and all those things. He had not practiced the last couple of days before that. You know, I was with Mark on his show and earlier in the week, and he's like, he hasn't done anything since the TCU game. I think before the game yesterday, he kind of went through the walkthrough, the shoot around a bit, which is kind of a light, workout. And they knew he was going to play, but he's lost some. He's kind of had a virus and just kind of he's nausea and all this stuff, and so he's dropped some weight. He just doesn't have a lot of energy. They're trying to do everything they can to give him rest and try to get him back. But you could just tell he doesn't feel great, and he's not all there, literally. And it's just hard to, like, if you miss a bunch of practices, you're not feeling well, to kind of turn it on, especially in an environment like that. But I think he gave you about all he could last night. He had finished with 6.6 rebounds. He plays 26 minutes, but if you remember watching the game, he's in there for a minute or two stretches and then out, and it's just like you just kind of constantly yo-yo this all night, just because he just wasn't, and unfortunately, it's just like bad luck, I guess. But if he plays normal, if he gives you the normal effort, I mean, he could have been a dominating factor in that game based on what Kansas has down low. I mean, he's better than KJ Adams. He's better than, Zach Clements and Cam Martin and anybody that they were wanting to throw at you. Again, based on the normal version of Daniel Bacho. But again, bad luck there. And you just don't, that's not what you had from him. But you were just lucky that you got 26 minutes from him, because if you don't have that, I mean, and you could tell when you're watching this game, KJ Allen, you can start to see where the limitations are. Robert Jennings, the boy, gets moving really fast. I mean, that's what Big 12 play. I mean, you could just start to see how many real pieces do we have versus how many are we just hoping for, or can we get a minute or two? But Bacho is clearly one of those. And when you don't have all of him, boy, it just, and luckily some guys around him stepped up, like O'Banner.
Well, I thought he left it all out there.
Yes.
You saw Bacho being Bacho just in very small spurts. I mean, at one point he had a big. I thought this was kind of funny, actually, because I think Bacho kind of not gave up, but whatever. He didn't go after a loose ball or a long rebound in the same kind of way as we're accustomed to. And homeboy sitting a couple of seats down there from where I was. Well, what's he even out there for? And I'm telling you, it was within 10 seconds. He blocks a shot and then goes and gets a hoop and the harm. I can't remember if he made the free throw or not, but I mean, within 10 seconds of that guy saying that, Bacho's being Bacho again. But yeah, he was just he was bumping his head on a stamina ceiling or whatever it might have been. There's no question about it.
Well, and Casey, the lucky part is that I think you alluded to this a bit ago, but that last play at the very end of the game, it was not kind to Daniel Bacho. And for a brief period, I thought things just went from really bad to worse here, because if he is injured, you are in serious trouble. Just because.
So what's the context around that now?
Yeah, so and we haven't talked about the no call when Pop Isaacs goes down and Jalen Wilson basically pulls Daniel Bacho to the ground, but it ends up being a run out, and they throw it ahead to KJ Adams, and Daniel Bacho tried to contest the dunk there, and no technical foul on KJ Adams for hanging on the rim for a really, really long time. But in the midst of that, Daniel Bacho is trying to contest that dunk, and I think he dislocates a finger maybe. I'm going, and I think he's going to be okay. So I think you've dodged a bullet. And directly to my right, you can see. That's why I've had this happen to me. You look over, and it's like whoever is having it reset, you don't want to look, and there's people holding around, and you're biting a towel. This was the scene. This was the scene with Daniel Bacho. Right. I watched him come through the handshake line right in front of me, and everything appears fine. But I think they did have a finger that was not. Oof. Place, and I think they put it back where it was supposed to go, based on my visual. But I think he's going to be okay. Now,
no big deal for us sitting in the stands. It's fine.
Yeah, that's right. Well, because I'm thinking the way he goes down, I'm thinking, did he break his hand? Did he break his wrist? Well, it dislocated his shoulder because he had it was quite the fall when he was holding his out.
Like wrist in a weird way. That's exactly what I was thinking. Man, wrist.
And it was really, really red, and and it looked swollen. I just couldn't tell as I was looking at the monitor in front of us, but as he came through right in front of us at the handshake line, it appears everything's going to be okay. But he was shaking hands and kind of holding one hand a little bit gingerly compared to the other. But it almost went from bad to worse. But luckily he'll be okay, because if you could just get him back to normal, he can dominate in this league. I mean, he is phenomenal. He's got 8 block shots in the first 2 conference games. I mean, he's averaging 4 block shots a game.
Pretty good.
That is elite. I mean, that is elite. And I think he surprises folks with his athleticism, because there was a couple times where I thought Kansas thought, yeah, this guy's not. And then it's like, okay, well, it's in the third row. And, so I just think there's a bit of a surprise there with his shot blocking and rim protection in general. But if you could just get him back, and that's why it may be good you play on a Tuesday, you don't play again till Saturday. So here it is Wednesday, and you've got some time before the next game. So anyway, but yeah, that's the Bacho report is what I can give you anyway.
If he keeps blocking that many shots, Renard Buys Houses on Twitter is going to want to adopt him as his son. It's really incredible to watch. And I'll say this, it was just for a moment, but it was in a big moment. Robert Jennings knocked down a little mid-range soft touch shot there on the baseline, and I thought, hey, within just a microcosm, big moment for Robert Jennings. I know it was only 2 points, Chris, but for a guy you're trying to bring along, and that's not the easiest shot for anybody, really, much less a big man. I was glad to see him knock it down.
Yeah, I'm looking at Robert Jennings plays just under 4 minutes, but he has the 1 bucket. But again, this is where these are moments where these guys have to learn and grow up. But you could see little things you get away with against Nichols, Eastern Washington, Jackson State, on and on and on it goes. Those are, that's all the little things is why, because think about this again. You don't like the way the game is officiated at the very end. But then I go back to Kevin O'Banner missing that dunk. He kind of over-rotates or throws the ball, and it hits the side of the rim, it bounces out. I go back to there was a missed alley-oop opportunity to Daniel Bacho, if you remember that, where it's just like a gimme if you just execute it. And look at the final score. And it's like if you have those moments, one of them, both of them, you just wonder how differently the game goes. But again, you get away with a missed dunk or a missed alley-oop or all these things against some of these non-conference teams. You can get away with probably a dozen of them, and you're still going to survive it. Against Kansas or on the road in this league against whoever you're playing, it's just there's a bright light on all those mishaps, because if you let too many opportunities go by, because you as a team, you just don't have this great margin for error. You just don't. It's going to be similar to your football team. They're going to have to play really hard, and there's not a ton of NBA talent or anything like that. But again, there's going to be certain things you have to do. And last night, boy, it was just a frustrating way. But again, plenty that you can build on for sure.
So not the worst news for Daniel Bacho. That's good to hear, and hopefully he'll continue to return to full Bacho power with each day that passes. Coming up next, we will wrap it up with a couple more mentions here, talking personnel. Davion Harmon, Lamar Washington. First half last night, Harmon plays 17 minutes, Washington plays 6. Second half last night, Harmon plays 8 minutes, Washington plays 15. I'm going to point my fingers to the sky like Brian Windhorst coming up next, and I'm going to say, now, why is that? We'll get to that, and also, will we really complain about officiating on a night when, I swear if I'm reading this right, Kansas shot 4 free throws? 4 for the game. Are we really going to do this? Maybe so. We'll do it coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. Great to be back with you on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, YouTube, anywhere you get podcasts. You'll find us each weekday with Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. It was 75-72, the wrong way for the Red Raiders from United Supermarkets Arena, but they got an opportunity coming up Saturday night back at home. Great conference opening crowd, Chris. I mean, I got no vibe problems whatsoever from the USA. Was able to pick up a couple of tickets for me and my sweetheart, and happily learned that I had been integrated into the student section proportionally. So I heard some language I hadn't heard in a long, long time.
Man, and I can only imagine what was said if you hadn't heard it. Yeah.
Well, just not that boisterously.
Okay,
you know what
gotcha.
I'm saying? In front of my wife, by the way. Yeah. My grandfather did teach me how to speak in front of a woman, and it wasn't the same way exactly as you'd speak otherwise. But there were some messages that had to get across, like the student section wanting Kevin McCullough to know, we found you, Kevin. I think they're saying, found you. Like, you're there. We can see you. We know where you are. You're not hiding, something like that. But I thought the crowd was off the hook, man. You certainly were not lacking for energy on the floor. I'm sure you felt it down there courtside.
Well, definitely so. Is down the stretch, you know, when you start to make a few plays and hit some shots, and that you could just, that crowd just feels like it. And this is what it's like playing against the Jayhawks in their building every time you go up there, is that crowd is a factor, and the Red Raiders crowd certainly was that. I'm told that they're expecting another huge crowd against Oklahoma on Saturday, because it's one of the lone Saturday home games you've got for a good long while. Yeah. So they've sold a ton of tickets, and that's going to be a monster game for Texas Tech. You simply cannot drop to 0-3 in this league. You cannot do it. So that'll be a huge one. But I was curious how the crowd would be. It wasn't full, but it was close to it. And again, no students there. And I was also curious how the McCullough thing would go. I thought he was kind of a non-factor in the game. I thought he hit one, big shot early, and then told the crowd to be quiet, and he's telling everybody to be, and all that. And then he kind of played terribly until he hit a big shot at the very end of the game, which Bill Self said it was the biggest shot of the game because it gave them a 73-70 lead. It was just a mid-range jumper, but he committed several fouls, and he just kind of, you could tell that it rattled him a bit. Just the foul trouble, or just the focus on him. But as far as the game goes, he was just kind of just a guy for the Jayhawks. But again, when you have that as kind of just a guy, as a role player type guy, you're going to be pretty dang good. That's because their role players are a lot better than yours are right now. I mean, easily. But I didn't know if he was going to come in and have a monster night or whatever. But it was DeJuan Harris that certainly did that and all that. But great crowd.
I just thought that McCullough, that shot was huge. It may have been the biggest shot of the game. I hated to see him be the one to knock that down. Otherwise, he was mostly a non-factor. I don't begrudge a guy going after cash, which is what he went after. And the people that were offering all the cash is a historical blue blood in the Kansas Jayhawks. So I understand that as well. But if all of that leads to turning your back on the Red Raiders, then the hell with you. How's your mother? Yeah. Is all I can say. So, I mean, we all understand the reasons. Cash, blue blood. This is what combined to make Kevin McCullough no longer a Red Raider. that's neither here nor there. Great environment. And yeah, I can't wait for Saturday night. As I'm perusing for tickets myself, Chris, I'm just thinking, where are all the Saturdays? And Oklahoma is one of the few opportunities you got. So that one's going to be jumping. I don't have any doubt about that. Can we go back to what I said a moment ago? We mentioned two names, Lamar Washington, Davion Harmon. Combined, it's not like either one of these guys was, really flashing that much. I mean, for the most part overall, whether it's points-wise, assists-wise, which was not good for Texas Tech overall in that. I think he had like 10 as a team. That's not good. I'm not trying to paint either of these in some rosy picture, but I thought it was really interesting that down the stretch, it was like Washington time and not so much Harmon time. I gave you the minutes played breakdown just a moment ago, and they reversed in the second half. The ugliest thing for Davion Harmon, aside from 1 for 5 shooting, 0 assists, 3 turnovers. I think the best thing for Lamar Washington, aside from 4 points that he put in, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, no turnovers. So what did you see transpiring between these two players and the way they were being used as the game went on?
Well, I think, Mark was asked about Davion because it was noticeable. Again, we've talked about there's certain pieces on this team must play well if you're going to win a game like that. Okay. Saturday, it's Harmon and Isaacs, and then there's not a third or fourth component to it. Last night, it's Isaacs and it's O'Banner, but there's not a third or fourth component to it. Jalen Tyson helped a bit, but Harmon was it just picked a bad night to have a tough game. And Mark was asked about him after the game, hey man, it just wasn't his night. But Harmon's issue is that, unlike he doesn't have a quick release on his shot. I mean, it's slower release, and he's shorter. Okay, so he can't get that shot off like when he wants to, as much as Pop Isaacs can. I think the turnovers are something that is frustrating because he's typically avoids all of that, and he's the guy that's setting people up. But instead, he was looking for bailout calls, and he's trying to finish off the glass, falling out of bounds, and you're just not going to get those calls against a longer, more athletic team like Kansas was. And so it was just it was frustrating just to see that. And again, I don't think it will continue to be this way. I think Harmon is going to get plenty more opportunities. He's got to be one of your best guys.
He has to. You got no other choice, right? Really?
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. But the good sign is Lamar Washington got an opportunity, didn't really screw it up, and I think he'll continue. Because here's what you're seeing here, man. No DeMarion Williams in either one of these conference games. Elijah Fisher just played briefly against Kansas, did not play versus TCU. Kerwin Walton has a brief stretch against TCU and I think against Kansas, but that's it. So
yeah, he took a shot, I think, and put it in Terry Fuller's lap on the front row over there.
Airball. Yeah. And so that's the difference between your team and so many others is that next level or that the depth piece. It's not there right now, but it's pretty clear. I mean, because let's be honest right now. Let's just call it like we see it. Right now, you have your starting 5, okay? And then last night, one of your starters wasn't getting it done, so you put Lamar Washington in. But your depth really consists of Robert Jennings, KJ Allen, and Lamar Washington. Those 3 guys. That's who you trusted and leaned on. There's just not, and there's not a lot there with those 3. It's just compare that to last year. Compare that to last year when either Davion Warren or TJ Shannon are going to come off the bench, and Marcus Santos Silva is going to come off the bench. And you've still got, some other pieces after that. And then you compare that to what you've got here. It's a vastly different team and all that. And the league may be as good as it's ever been on paper right now. Bottom line, the data all suggests it. Go look at what Kansas State did in Austin last night by scoring 116, 113 points or whatever. Just and they were picked to finish dead last.
Crazy.
Now they're 2-0. So look out.
Harmon's still playing hard. I know he's just
he is
in there, but man,
and he'll get it
back to the Big 12.
That's right.
At 2 games for him, 5 for 19 against Texas Christian and Kansas combined, 2 for 7 from beyond the arc. 2 to 5 is the assist to turnover ratio. He's going to play better than that, but man, it's been a tough start so far for him to Big 12 play. But again, he's playing hard and gives you a hope that he'll get some things figured out. Now, Chris, before we are out of here, I've double-checked this box score 1,000 times. I think this is real. The Kansas Jayhawks shot 4 free throws in the game last night, yet we're still going to leave and point some fingers at guys in striped shirts. Is that actually going to happen? I know we need to separate the two, but it's kind of weird to have that kind of beef on a night when the Jayhawks are pretty much non-existent at the charity stripe.
Well, it is weird at some level, but it's really not, in that I've seen, and there's been some controversies before. I mean, you go look at, I think Bob Huggins has been pretty famously pointed some of these things out after games up in Lawrence where, the home team shoots about 30 free throws, and then his Mountaineers would maybe not even attempt any, or attempt like 6 or whatever. You attempted, you were 10 of 12. They were 2 of 4. And they didn't call a lot last night, period. But I early in the game, I watched Bill Self, really come unhinged and get in the middle of John Higgins, which is a Final Four official. I'm telling you, it was extremely animated. I didn't know exactly what the point was, but it was extremely animated, and it went on. And there's not many coaches that would be allowed to do that. Or being given the grace to do that. I don't know if Mark if he would have done that, if he would have been able to allow to get away with it. But I guess that comes with Hall of Fame, or I guess that comes with being suspended. I guess that comes with national champion. I don't know, but
maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. But and there's no doubt, Bill Self is a phenomenal coach. He's one of the best in the sport. But it's just like it's a weird deal. But at the end of the game, I said it on the broadcast. I'm like, whatever you draw up, because there was a blocked shot that I think Jalen Tyson had that they called a foul. Mark got frustrated about it. He was like, that's terrible. And he wanted to talk to Terry Oglesby, the official at the other end of the court, and he was pretty animated. And so I thought, okay, that was with about a minute and a half, 2 minutes left. So I thought, okay, down the stretch, you're going to get the benefit of the doubt if you are aggressive. You've got to go earn it.
Yeah.
And all that. And I was just dead wrong, because I think you get a pick and roll with you call that timeout with about 24 seconds left, and there's just a 1 second left on the shot clock and the game clock difference as far as that goes. So you could have held it for the last shot and tried to win it. And you get a pick and roll, on the up at the top of the key. And Jalen Wilson literally has his, because this is, I had as much issue with the way Pop was handled as the Bacho thing. Jalen Wilson has 2 hands around Bacho's waist, and he's just falling down, and he just grabs Bacho, and down they go. And there's just bodies all in the middle of the floor. So that is one issue. And then you can't hip check a guy like I think it was Pettiford. He's the one that was guarding Pop Isaacs. But for there not to just to say incidental contact, I don't know. There's bodies falling over there. There's no fouls here. I had a hard time with that, because that this is 1,000% fact. This same thing would not have happened in Lawrence, Kansas. And I told Brian Haney, who I used to broadcast games with, who does the Kansas games, I was like, I told him right after the game, I said, I don't know why Texas Tech doesn't get that call and Kansas does in their building. Like, I don't know why Texas Tech doesn't get that call, because you've had recent success. You've been in the Final Four. You've got this 29-game home winning streak that's now over with and all that. They blew it. I mean, I think I don't mind saying that. But, again, I go back to the missed dunk and the missed layups, and, this is what losers say. But it was just frustrating to see it in that way. At least if you're going to lose it, miss free throws at the end and have an opportunity to try to tie it or win it, but you didn't get that opportunity. Such is life, I guess.
You not living up as a team to doing your job at various points in the game, missing a dunk or whatever it might be,
right,
doesn't absolve the officials from not living up to their job in that moment. And it was almost like, hey, class is almost over. Johnny's back here still spitting spitwads, but the teacher's like, man, the hell with it. It's 5 o'clock on Friday, and I don't know who goes to school till 5. That's weird. 3:30 on Friday. I'm not messing with Johnny. This is going to be paperwork I got to fill out. I got to sort it out. I'm trying to get to the weekend. The refs are thinking, we're almost out of here. Incidental contact. It's third down. Let's keep rolling or whatever. I don't know why you just let that go. Like, what is incidental contact anyway? Brian Windhorst it again. Why is that? To bring it all back full circle, why is that? I don't know, Chris. One of life's mysteries. But what I do know, after observing basketball my entire life, it is easier to take a manned space flight to the moon than consistently officiate a basketball game. It must be, because we've done that, and we've never done the latter of what I've just mentioned. That just doesn't happen consistently. From end to end, from tip-off to final buzzer, you will not find it actually taking place. I never heard of Higgins or whoever you mentioned, but you say he's a Final Four official.
Yeah, he's been to multiple Final Fours. Yeah, I mean, he's the guy that the Kentucky fans went after several years ago, and there had to be like it was ugly.
The dentist?
No, he's a contractor, lives in Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean,
wasn't there a dentist they shut down or something like that?
I don't know, but this one was ugly. This one got really, really personal, and like I think, the website that reported on Higgins or kind of said, "Hey, here's his company and all that." They got some trouble, I believe. But and I'm not saying it was his call there at the end. I don't know who was in position to make the call. I just know that's who was getting into it with Bill. So I think most people don't like John Higgins. I think he does a really good job because he's pretty consistent. But I just didn't think last night. I didn't grasp the magnitude of the play versus the non-call and the setting. I didn't. Hey, look, if you just heave up a desperation, perimeter jump shot and then are crying foul on getting hit on the wrist, I don't feel sorry for you because you weren't the aggressor. No, you were trying to get downhill and get to the rim and attack the basket and put the ball in the hands of one of your best free throw shooters and Pop Isaacs. And for him to just go down, clearly getting hip checked, but then your big center gets pulled to the ground. I mean, there was a lot there. And KJ Adams is still hanging on the rim at the other end, and he's not trying to protect himself. Daniel Bacho's in the stands, laying down, and KJ Adams is swinging around the rim. That's in a lot of cases a technical foul. If you do that, with 5 minutes left in the game, that's a T, and the other team's shooting a free throw. So, but again, this is the loser's limp, man. This is what we talk about when you lose a game like that.
That's tough. I know. I've never heard of a loser's limp. I've heard of like a pimp walk or something like that, or a Tupac court walk. But I've never heard about the loser's limp. I don't like that one as much. I did some investigative reporting after the game on behalf of all Locked On Texas Tech viewers and listeners. I staked out the officials' exit from United Supermarkets Arena after the game, and I can confirm all of them wearing brand new, shiny pairs of Adidas sneakers. So again, why is that? We'll continue to ponder such questions apart and return, of course, on the other side together again to be here on Locked On Texas Tech. Appreciate you for being here as always and joining us on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Chris, thanks for the time, my man, and I'm sure we'll have something exciting to discuss coming up again this weekend. That's life in the Big 12, man. Gotta love it.
Yep. Bounce back, man. Keep hope alive, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.
That's right. We're back here on the other side once again on Locked On Texas Tech.